Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin, amma ba'd. So tonight, inshallah ta'ala, will be the second night in discussing matters pertaining to Ahkam Ramadan. So yesterday we have discussed concerning the tool or the book that we are studying from, and as we had mentioned, it's one of the books of the ulama of the Shafi'iyah. And also we mentioned something about the method of Imam Shafi, and then we started discussing the book, and the book that we are using, that it is titled Umdatu Saalik. So the book that we are using, that it is titled Umdatu Saalik wa Uddatul An-Nasik, and it is by Ibn Naqib al-Misri. And in the lesson yesterday when we started that discussing the book, that we mentioned that we are covering in this book particular Kitab al-Siyam, so discussing matters pertaining to Kitab al-Siyam as a form of reminder to ourselves and a review of the things to be done in the month of Ramadan. So as what the author mentioned when he started the book, that we had discussed concerning, as he mentioned, Yajib Sawm Ramadan. So he first mentioned those that is upon them for them to fast Ramadan. So he mentioned as the criteria for one to fast Ramadan will become compulsory. He mentioned kulli Muslim, one must be Muslim, balig, above the age of puberty, aqil, the person of sound mind, qadir ala sawm, and the fourth are the person that he has the ability to fast. And he mentioned ma khalaw min al-hayd wal nifas, and also that one should be free from hayd wal nifas, meaning that the woman should not be in her monthly cycle, nor is she experiencing after child bleeding. So that's as he generally outlined as the criteria for a person to fast. You find some of the ulama in adding to that of those who have added concerning al-muqim. So even some of the Shafi'iyah, al-Sheikh Imrani, in his explanation of in his book Al-Bayan, that he included that other condition, which is al-muqim, that the person also, he should be muqim, that is local in his locality. So those are generally the criteria that I've mentioned. Then he went on to explain after then the second paragraph he mentioned وَلَا يُخَاطِبْ الْكَافِرِ لَا يُخَاطِبْ الْكَافِرِ, that also of those people that are not included, meaning that of those who are not compulsory upon them to fast Ramadan. He mentioned kafir. We discussed concerning the kafir as-sabi, the one who's a child, majnoon, and one who's insane. So those three groups of people are excluded from fasting. Then he mentioned man ajhadahu as-sawm, and also ajhadahu as-sawm, the one who finds it difficult, from jahada, from mushaqqa, the one who finds it difficult to fast. Then he mentioned likibar, due to the person old age. Then he mentioned marad. Then also second group of people who are exempt from fasting, somewhat are those who are said to be marid, those who are ill. Then I mentioned the form of the type of illness, la yurja bur'u, that the one who is illness is somewhat terminal illness. So the person going through terminal illness that they experience, that I mentioned. So those group of people not allowed, they mentioned bi ada'in wala qada, meaning that these group of people that the group of people that they are not allowed to fast due to their condition and their situation, for them to fulfill to fast in Ramadan, nor to make up after, because they are unable. So the person who have that, I mentioned a person who's old age, who's unable, and second, the person who's ill and have very terminal illness, where they don't, we said they're not looking to recover soon from their illness. For those people, they're not to fast this Ramadan, the present Ramadan, by way of ada, and also not for them to make up later. Then he mentioned walakin yalzim. Then what is upon those people? He mentioned man ajadahu, the one who find it difficult. As he mentioned, the ones who find it difficult, it goes back to the one who's old in age, and also the one who have terminal illness. He mentioned yalzim man ajadahu as-sawm, that for them that find it difficult to fast, likulli yawm mud ta'am, that for those group of people who find it difficult, unable to fast by way of ada, to do it to fast at this moment, they're not able to fast at this moment, nor they're able to make up later on. Then he mentioned for those people that likulli yawm mud ta'am, for them to pay as a form of fidya for each day that they miss. They have to pay a fine, which is that fine is that mud at-ta'am, which is equivalent to, you mentioned mud at-ta'am. So they have to give for each day that is missed, that you're unable to fast, they have to pay a form of fidya, a form of Asia fidya in English, some form of payment, compensation that has to be paid by way of, and that compensation, it is measured by mud. So a mud, the ulama mention, is like a normal hand, the person with both hands full with food, rice. So one, both hands filled with rice, then that's considered to be a mud by way of measurement. So that's way of measurement. Hey, that color look a bit strange, huh? On his head. Sorry. So for each day, they will consume also a mud of ta'am. So Allah mentioned that ta'am, that would be the person of some like a meal. Now, so it would be like the person will be given like a meal, and that meal to be given per day that is missed. They mentioned that this payment for those people who are unable to fast at present, nor to make up later, they have to make a payment, a kafara has to be done, or that this kafara has to be done for that person. Then the amount to be given is a mud, as mentioned, and which is, like we said, a plate of the person is to feed a person for each day. That is not to be done before the start of Ramadan. So meaning that payment for those people are unable, they are very ill, sick, terminal illness, that they still have to pay this amount, but it is to be paid not, for example, Ramadan will start 2 days from now. Example, Ramadan will start 2 days from now. So the person can somewhat calculate, they're going to be 30 days, I'm going to pay before Ramadan, so let's say that X amount, pay out X amount before the start of Ramadan, then that is not to be done. So that to be paid after, not before. So that the payment has to be made after, not before. Because the person doesn't know if the person might calculate, I'm going to calculate all 30 days before they even start fasting. Do you know exactly how much day you might live for in Ramadan? We don't know. So the person can do it for each day that is missed. He pray the day on in the evening after breaking fast, or you can somewhat do it in, like I said, in blocks. Do 1 week, then pay for that week. Then next week when it ends, then you pay for that second, at the end of the second week, and can also do it in blocks, or every 3 days, every day. But it's done after, not before. It is done not before. So that's concerning that matter. Then those are the matters we have covered somewhat yesterday. So he mentioned that those who must fast. Then he mentioned those who are exempt because they do not fulfill the criteria as stated due to reasons. Then he mentioned those people who may fulfill certain criteria, some of the criteria, but did not fulfill all due to their age, very old in age, or very ill. So people who are of that category, that they still require that, even though they cannot fast or make up, then they have to do some form of substitute, which is paying of that kafara. Then he mentioned after this, in giving some more clarity on this topic, he mentioned ويخاطب المريض والمسافر والمرتد والآهد والنفساء بالقضاء دون الأداء. Then he mentioned the next of those masail, or those things, that the next point that he wished to discuss, يخاطب المريض. So also of those people that they are being addressed by way of the Sharia. So Sharia addressing these people, these group of people, which is the one who's the marid, the one who's ill, the musafir, the one who's a traveler, the one who's a murtad, the one who's an apostate. Then I mentioned al-hahid, the one who's the menstruating woman, nufasa, after child bleeding, bil qada. That these group of people, that they have to make up dun ada. So they don't per se, these people that they will miss that day, whatever days that they are missed, due to those, they have valid reasons, they have reasons, but they have to make it up later. So they mentioned that rule bil qada. So due to valid reasons, that a person who's married, the person said to be al-musafir, that he can miss or not fast that day, or the ahid or the nufasa, they miss those days, but they have to make it up. Then also they include al-murtad. So they also include concerning the case of a murtad. So they mentioned the murtad was a person who was a Muslim, then left Islam. They said that person is still required to implement Islam. And them, even in the state of them, if the person, for example, leave Islam, yada billah, then miss days of Ramadan, then return back to Islam, accept Islam, they have to make up those missed days. So they're not like a kafir asli, they are a bit different. So the person who's in apostate, he has to make up the days that were missed. that I mentioned. So include them of those people have to make qada, have to make up days that are missed. So that's concerning what he mentioned regarding that group of people that, as we know, so the marid, he makes up, and the others that you have mentioned, and we'll discuss this a little further as we go down. Then he mentioned, so that's concerning that group of people. The ones who, first group, regarding those who have excuse or reason, the one who's ill, terminal illness, or the one who's old, but they have to still do some form of compensation. Another group of people, which are those ones who the Sharia, in most of these people, have been given a legitimate reason to miss fast, except for the person of murtad. So the musafir, the marid, the one who's on her cycle, the one who's a child, still going through her child after child bleeding, that they miss during that time, but they make up after. They have to make up whatever days that were missed after.
So why did the mu'allif, why did he mention murtad between people who actually do qada? So marid, or some specific marid, musafir, and then he just throws murtad, which it doesn't fit in.
It fit. Some said that the most of the ones that I mentioned said the most of the ones that he mentioned have been given by the Sharia legitimate reason to break their fast, right? So except for the murtad. So he mentioned the murtad. We mentioned that in this case the murtad that is mentioned yukhatib, that they are still the murtad is still being addressed in the Sharia as a person who's supposed to still fulfill Islamic duties. So for that person said in the time of their apostasy, you understand, even though you understand that they are not considered to be a Muslim, but they still are required if they were to come back to Islam to make up what they missed. That's why they mention as qada. So those people that even though during that time they understand they have left Islam, but whatever they missed, for example in this case as siyam, it still need to be made up. It's still to be made up. So they are still grouped as those they are still a group within those class of people that needs to make up days that were missed after, at some point. Clear? So qada is still upon them, including al-murtad. So aywa, then clear? Then I mention وإن تكلف المريض والمسافر فصام سحدونه المرتد والآهد والنفساء. Then I mention the next point that he discussed concerning that as for فإن تكلف المريض والمسافر فصام, that even if the person who said to be marid and the one who said to be a musafir, that for whatever reason that they choose to fast, fasama, and both of them fast, and I mention sahaduna al-murtad, then there it is still considered to be a valid siyam. So the person who, even though as a musafir, you have a concession, you have you have been given permission to not fast, but as a musafir you still choose to fast, then that is still valid. That is still valid, no? Except for you have a view of some of the ulama, some of the zahiriya, that all concern the musafir, that he must fast. That's a view of some of the zahira, but the jumhur of the ulama take the view that's not the case. Now, that as we'll discuss somewhat so, that the general concern, the musafir, that so he mentioned concern that in of the books of mentioned that al-bayan, when he discussed concerning a safar, fi safar, that he mentioned amma musafir, the case of musafir, that they discuss one. So they mentioned that so they mentioned that as you discuss concerning the person who's marid, that is illness, that is one which is going through the illness, but he's still able to fast. Maybe a bit difficult, but he's still able to fast. Then if he was to fast, whatever he's facing, it's still valid. He doesn't have to make up that day after. Clear?
Okay.
So that's concerning those two group of people, even though they have a valid reason to break their fast. So said the person who's ill, but he still chose to fast with his illness, and it doesn't become where it's still valid. And the same thing applies to the musafir. They're still valid. On this matter, you find that Al-Imrani.
So if a person who's marid and he suffers from an illness, that the days that he has specific treatment, for example, say he's on
Dialysis. أيوة.
So the days he has treatment, he can't fast. But the days he doesn't have treatment, he chooses to fast. So would that individual have to make up for the day
that he fasted?
The day that he didn't fast and do maybe fidya, and then the day that he fasted would be accepted.
I'm saying the person, if the example I gave, said the person who is in a case of dialysis, that the days that he does is treatment.
Yeah.
You understand? So he might go in a couple of days a week. That's the person going for that treatment 3 days a week. So the 3 days he doesn't fast. So those days he doesn't fast. But if what you're saying, that the other days, the other 4 days, that the person, even though they fast those days. You understand? They fast those days. So the days that they fast, you understand that personal condition, the 4 that they fast, they don't make it up after. The days that they have their treatment, then those days have to be made up. Because if they were able to fast those other 4, that it shows that they have the ability to still, even though they have an illness, they're still able to manage fasting. So even after Ramadan, they should make it up. So with the case of the person that have said the person illness is terminal. You understand? So terminal means that the person that is unable to fast at all. He may want to, but the doctor might tell him that if you fast, then you understand, he's told by the doctor, you should not fast because it may make your situation worsen your situation severely, or delay. You understand? So in that case, marid, in the case of the person, if his illness, that marid center that shouldn't fast, that the one that if fasting it delay your recovery, right, make your situation worse, then those people shouldn't fast. Those people, they shouldn't fast. And the Prophet, as I mentioned, is concerning ليس من البر الصيام في السفر. ليس من البر الصيام في السفر. The Prophet, as I mentioned, concerned to know that people who were fasting and they were traveling and they were going through difficulties. They mentioned ليس من البر الصيام في السفر. For a person who's traveling but he's finding it difficult and he still fasts, then that is not, that is disadvised. That is highly disadvised for him to do so. Clear? Eh?
2 questions, sorry. The terminal ill person, sometimes the doctor says that you've got like a month to live or 2 months to live or something.
There you are.
If that happens to the person, so they don't fast obviously, but then what if they get better after that? Do they need to bring it up?
In those cases, that instead, if those cases, the person that is a person with terminal illness, for the fact that it's classed, what I say, classed as a terminal illness, mean the person is there looking for the person to pass away soon. You understand? So in that case, the person is a terminal, the doctor said, a person like you should not fast. You understand? As for whether the person did live according to the time that was mentioned by the doctor or after, then for them, it's not wajib upon them to fast because they're terminally ill.
So even if they recover totally?
And if they recover completely, the doctor said that you have recovered, then it's a different case.
That's what I'm saying. If they recover
So that case, if initially, Allahu Alam, the doctor was saying that you have terminal illness, where they see that you're going to pass away soon, month, whatever time they give, and the person is somewhat just waiting to go. You understand? But then after things turn around completely, then the rules now apply for that person from then.
Okay, so they don't need to.
So what after they were making stuff from it. So when they were terminally ill, they will give fidya each day. So the time it was the turnaround, we use the word turnaround, there was the other word, the M word. You understand? The turnaround. So from the time the turnaround that person, they recover completely. You understand? Then that person then start to apply things normally from then. Clear?
If someone, is it the same if someone's in a coma?
Aywa.
For the whole month of Ramadan or something.
Hey.
For the whole, nearly for the whole year, and they wake up in Sha'ban or something like this. And they're okay.
And then that person knows harm upon then what? Then the rules didn't apply to them while they were in a coma. The pen and everything had been lifted to them while they're in a state of that type of a coma. Goes for a long, prolonged time. And they miss, so the pen had been lifted upon them, so they have to make up. Where are we at? So after thing we mentioned regarding concerning يخاطب المريض, so we discussed concerning فإن تكلف المريض والمسافر فصام, and both of them choose to fast. We mentioned to know that it still considers that even though it may be some difficult, it still count as fasting. It still counts as fasting, meaning that they don't have to make it up after. Nam. So that type of illness, and the ulama say illness on different levels, degrees. I said you have terminal, then you have illness where the person can somewhat, you understand, you it your finger, you understand, get a little cut, we understand. Those things, you have a slight headache, you understand. So those cases are considered to be slight illnesses. Then you have cases of the person that is severe. Person might have a severe headache, right? So those ones are more severe. The person in those cases, then they are allowed to break their fast in minor, very minor injuries. Then no, minor injuries. Then no. Then I mentioned المسافر فصام فصح دون المرتد والآهد. As I mentioned, as for the person who's al-murtad, then if they were to fast, it doesn't count because they don't have niyyah. Their niyyah doesn't count. And of the thing concerned, niyyah relates to al-Islam. So the person, as we mentioned before, for the kafir, for it to be valid, Islam is a criteria. So the person who's a non-Muslim, as a murtad is considered to be a non-Muslim apostate, then that siyam, it doesn't count while in a state of, in that state. Well, so I mentioned that for a woman who's on a menstrual cycle, that even if she chooses to fast, then it doesn't count. And she's actually athima. So the woman, for example, she's going through a menstrual cycle and she chooses to fast that day still. Then she's considered that day does not count as a fasting day for her. She still have to make qada later. And also second, she's sinful. Because she's going against the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by fasting when she shouldn't. She's doing what she should not do. So that's concerning those matters. Then he mentioned, فإن mention وإن أسلم أو أفاق أو بلغ مفترا في إثناء النهار ندم إمساك والقضاء ولا يجبان. So the next of the matter to discuss, a matter regarding a certain group of people that relates to that, as we had mentioned, that with fasting there are certain criteria. So he mentioned regarding concerning if a person aslama, a person then who was a kafir asli, then he returned to Islam. A person then returned to Islam during Ramadan. During Ramadan, a person accepts Islam during Ramadan. So either the person accepts Ramadan and going to be during the night. So between after Maghrib, before Fajr, a person accepts Islam. So during the night, the person accepts Islam, right? Then that person, for example, tomorrow is Ramadan, one of the days of Ramadan. And the person accepts Islam now after Maghrib, before Fajr. Then the person, he has to fast that day, the following day. With me? Because he become af'al wujub. Because he come of those people who concerned that Ramadan becomes wajib upon them. فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. That the one who's present and is in the month of Ramadan, then he has to observe siyam. So the fact the person become alil wujub, the person become of those people, it becomes wajib upon them to and they fulfill the criteria. So that person who was said before Maghrib, he was a kafir, but after Maghrib he accept Islam, then that person will become he fulfill the criteria. If he fulfill all the other criteria, then it's a must upon them to fast the coming day. Must upon them to fast the coming day. So the next scenario, so it's because the person become of alil what? Wujub. The people become wajib upon them to fast, as we started with. Of them, ala kulli Muslim. Then and I mentioned Buddha Islam ala khams. So the person fall into those people who fall under that category. Then they mentioned the second group, which is that the person who accept Islam, and it was during their daylight hours, after Fajr, before Maghrib. So the person accept Islam during the daylight hours of Ramadan. What's expected from them? So they discuss two matters regarding those cases. And all that they mentioned, you have one, imsak, meaning, for example, the person accept Ramadan, accept Islam during that day of Ramadan. Just say 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock. They accept Islam 11 o'clock that morning. And Maghrib is at, just say 6 o'clock. Maghrib is at 6 o'clock. So they accept Islam at 11. Maghrib is at 6. So between 11 and 6, do they have the measure imsak? Do they can some abstain from eating and drinking? And also, and also second, are they to make qadha for that day? Are they to make up that day? Because they they accept Islam during the day. So you have those two things are discussed between the ulama. Those two things are discussed between the ulama on this matter. So they mentioned, as for the kafir, the one who accepts Islam for Ithna Ramadan, that mentioned that of those who mentioned that it is, he mentioned nadam. One of the view of the ulama and of the view of the Shafi'i have different view on the matter. So even Imran he mentioned, he goes in some, he mentioned, so we can mention each separately. He mentioned the kafir who accept Islam during the daylight hours. Then the ulama, they have two view on that. Now, of those who mentioned أنه يجب عليه, that he mentioned in the book that I mentioned is nadam, meaning it is not compulsory, it is advisable for him to abstain from eating and drinking for the rest of the day. It's advisable for him to abstain from eating and drinking for the rest of the day. And those who mentioned, they mentioned it is mustahab for a person to, as imsak, for the rest of the day. It is mustahab. So meaning mustahab, they mentioned it is not compulsory. So if a person still chooses to eat, then he hasn't done wrong. According to those who say it is mustahab. So they mentioned it is mustahab for a person to abstain from eating for the rest of the day. He said istibab. And I mentioned because it was a hurmatul waqt. So it's going to somewhat to honor the remaining that time, which is people should not be eating and drinking. Clear? Then according to that, they mentioned then there's so you have that view that is mentioned at the author here, he mentioned. Then they mentioned discuss method. So they mentioned that la yajib is not compulsory upon him to observe. Then discuss the next matter, that is it the person to make qadha? So that day is the person to make qadha. Does he make up that day? Because he start fasting, he accept Islam, so he become a Muslim and become of Ali wujub. From that time, so is he to make up that day or not? Abd ulama mentioned that it not becomes wajib upon the person also that he should not just nadam for him to not to, but it's a must upon him to observe the rest of the day fasting, even the person have eaten, because at that point he become min ahli Islam, ahli wujub. So from that point, that siyam becomes wajib upon him, just as salat become wajib upon him from that point. So he has to observe the rest of the day fasting. And he has the intention from there. His intention is from there. So that's concerned of. So, and the next matter they discuss that is upon a person al-qadha. Does he make up that day that he start fasting from that point, from the middle of the day? So on this matter also they mentioned that annahu la yajib alayh, that it is not compulsory upon a person to make up that day. Now, it's not compulsory upon a person to make up that day. And they mentioned, and they said it's not. The hadith that I mentioned, some that I mentioned concerning the Prophet that I mentioned, أما علمت أن الإسلام يهدم ما كان قبل. So that's kind of something, the hadith that I mentioned, where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned is hadith in Sahih Muslim, where I mentioned, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that أما علمت, do you not know, أن الإسلام يهدم ما قبل ما كان قبل, that Islam destroyed what was qabl. So whatever before, that it doesn't count. So from then, things count. From that point, things count. So they mentioned that, so whatever was done before, it doesn't count, so you do not, it's not compulsory for you to make up what you already missed, but you start from later on. Then the second view, they mentioned that, so the person concerned to know that for him, qadha, it starts from then. That the person will make up that day. So the first, you doesn't make up that day. So from that day, you consider to be like a miss, that day you don't make it up. But the second opinion, it takes a view concerning that the person, he makes up that day. He make up the day that he start fasting midday or part of the day. And as the call I mentioned, the call of Ahmed Ishaq and others that mentioned that And I mentioned that the person consider that adraka juz min al-waqt. The fact that you understand, so they mentioned that for that person, it becomes that you didn't fast the entire day, which is the fasting, the time it starts from Fajr and ends with Maghrib, so you catch in between. So fact of that, and you didn't start with the intention from the start. And so based upon this, that you have to make up that day. Based upon that view, you have to make up that day because you didn't fast the entire time, which is from Fajr until Maghrib. So according to them, that, and that's considered the call of the, as mentioned, is ashabina, of the view taken by some of the Shafi'iyah, that a person have to make up that day. He has to make up that particular day, but also the call of Ahmed wa Ishaq and others. So they mentioned that the waqt is fard, you didn't complete the entire timing. So they see it as the person who come to the salat and you caught after salat. You came, it's 4 rakah, and you came and you prayed 2, what will be done? You have to make up. So somewhat, they use these things or those type of qiyas with them. So that's concerning, we said the one who accept Islam. Then the next one they mention a group, others, they mention others. It says, Man aslama aw afaq aw balaga muftiran fi ithna Ramadan nudma al-imsak wal qada. So he mentioned that the one who accept Islam, the one who, that I mentioned next group of people, the one who was insane and gained his sanity during Ramadan or during Nisan, then that person have to make up. They mentioned to the person that during that day, that they regain their consciousness or their sound mind, that person have to nadam, that those group of people, that they withhold from eating and drinking for the rest of the day, and they make up that day after. They make up that day after. Then I mentioned that, so I mentioned those aqwal between the ulama. Then I mentioned, وَإِن بَلَغَ الصَّائِمِ لَزِمَهُ إِمْسَاكٌ وَنَدْمَ الْقُضَى. Then I mentioned إِذَا بَلَغَ, that also a person who is a child, that also have become an adult during Ramadan. So the one who become a child during Ramadan, so either occur concerns. So from that point, the person will become of Ahli Wujub. So the child would be, for example, midday, he turn into puberty. He gain his puberty during midday in Ramadan. That they mentioned that child, that they have a discussion, do they withhold eating for the rest of the day, and also do they make qada? So you have those aqwal. So that's the same discussion as before. The same discussion as before. That so they mentioned as for the majnoon, the one who said to be majnoon, insane, that if he was to gain sanity during the day of one of the days of Ramadan, that I mentioned that of the ulama mentioned lam yajib alayhi imsak. That it is not compulsory upon him that he has to abstain from eating and drinking for the rest of that day. And that applies to all other groups. The person who's majnoon, so I mentioned that. So I mentioned that the majnoon, he does not have to. And also, la yajib as-sawm ala majnoon wa la yuseh. And as generally concerned, the person who's said to be, I mentioned that the person who's said to be majnoon is not allowed to fast. And if he fasts, it's not valid, because the pen has been lifted from him. As in the hadith of Aisha wa Ali wa Ibn Abbas, rufi al-qalam and salat, that the pen has been lifted from 3 al-majnoon atta afaq, or yafiq, until the majnoon, until he regain his sanity. So those people that mentioned that, the majnoon, that of those who mentioned that, it's not upon him that he has to not eat for the rest of the day, but he start, so he doesn't have to do so. Of those mentioned to this, as I mentioned here, nadam, it's preferred for him to do so. It's preferred for him to do so. So that's concerned aqwal of the ulama. As for qada, the day that day itself, they mention again, no. So from the time that he gained his consciousness, then the rules apply to him. The child, when they became an adult, from that time, then the rules apply to him. Anything before them, it doesn't apply. So any days that was done before, they are not to be made up, but he start fasting by way of the people of Ahli Wujub from that point onwards. From that point onwards. So the majnoon person, that if he was to gain back is at some point during Ramadan, like even the past Ramadan, he was ill for 5 years. For example, he was ill for 5 years. Then he regain his, as they say, regain his senses. Then those 5 years that was missed, that he didn't fast, then they do not to be made up. They are not to be made up, nor any fidya to be paid for it. So he become of Ali wujub from the time that he regain his consciousness. So that's concerning that case concerning al-majnoon. They mention a case regarding that a category of people call them ma'tuh. So ma'tuh is a person who that, or to put it, if you talk to him, he can talk, he can have a conversation, but you know that he's off. You with me? So you know the person is not fully there, but you can talk to him. You understand? You can have a conversation, but you know when you're talking to him, you can tell that at times he's kind of somewhat, he's you understand, he's saying things that is just off. But he can have a little conversation to an extent. So it's like halfway in and out. Then those people also, then they do not fast. They mention concerning that, as for the person who is in that condition, that person, also that they do not, as they consider to be that the hadith concerning that rufi al-qalam and salat, that the pen is lifted on 3, they fall in that category. As they are not per se fully mentally there. They are not fully mentally there. So they mentioned those people also fall under those ones that said that the pen is lifted from them, so they do not fast. And I mentioned some of the hadith, or some narration of the hadith, Ahmed, wal Hakim, and Ibn Hajar and Sheikh Albani, wal hadith concerning Sheikh Albani, all the hadith, and Ibn Kathir, authentic hadith, and Ibn Hajar said the hadith with turuqihi, yaqawi ba'dahu ba'd, that they mentioned that in some narration mentioned, rufi al-qalam and thalath, and ma'atu atta yafiq. So they mentioned, and ma'atu atta yafiq, that the person who said no, what's the word to use? Halfway there, you understand? Until he gain his full senses. So the person like halfway, you understand, in, out, then, and also I can apply to the person on medication. You understand that the person on medication, that even though he's on medication, he's still, you understand, not fully there. He's not fully there even though he's on medication. So those group of people, then the pen is raised off them. The pen is raised off them. So they mentioned regarding concerning al-sabi, the child, that as we mentioned, that for the child, then of those who mentioned that is to observe fasting for the rest of the day and also make up that day. So the day that you can assume, the day that that child fall into adulthood, that they would, during the day, they would fast the rest of the day. And also they would make, and they said, I mentioned that some mention upon them is qada, and others mention that there's no, that day does not need to be made up. That day does not need to be made up. So you find that those mention that they should observe fast for the rest of that day, but also there's no qada upon them. That's the view taken by the Ahnaf, and also Riwaya and Ahmed, and also Ibn Taymiyyah and others. As they mentioned that they become of al-wujub. It starts from the time that they achieved becoming an adult. So everything for them, it starts from then and nothing before. Then so that's concerning those group of people that he mentions. Then Imrani he mentions regarding that discussion, that he mentioned that so something he mentioned, something what we have just stated regarding those group of people, where he mentioned that, so he mentioned regarding concern also the musafir. So regarding concern the musafir, that he mentioned also regarding the musafir, إذا قدم المسافر بلده, the musafir person who have traveling, then from one place to another, So he's coming from one place and he's coming from the place that he traveled and now returning back home. The musafir is now returning back home to his place of residence. في إثناء رمضان في إثناء نهار رمضان وهو مفطر. So he's left from where he's coming back home, returning back home. But when he left that place on his journey, he's muftir. He's not fasting. أو he mentioned bari al-marid, or the person who was ill, about serious illness, they couldn't fast, or the person who become well. The person who was ill become well. وَقَدْ كَانَ أَفْتَرْ, and the person have already broken his fast. أو طهرت العاهد والنفساء, or a woman that is on her menstrual cycle have come to an end, or a woman that is having her after child bleeding has come to an end. Concern is not if that person, if those things have come, she become pure. So the morning started, she was on her cycle, then it stopped during the day. The person was a traveler, and on his way, then they mentioned concerning those people that have reached home, those group of people are like this, that they mentioned that, he mentioned, لَمْ يَلْزِمْهُمْ الْإِمْسَاقِ بَقِيَ النَّهَارِ. All those group of people that it is not compulsory upon them that they have to observe or withhold eating and drinking for the rest of the day. So they mentioned, the person who's a musafir, the man is traveling from one place and coming back home. His wife was on her cycle that morning and stopped during the day. So when he got back home, 12 o'clock, dhuhr, he is back home, but he was a traveler. And he, on the plane, he ate. With me? So when he got home, he's 1 o'clock, he's at home now, 1 o'clock, but he broke his fast, but he's not at home now. And his wife, she was on her, what? Her menses, and then she stopped at 10 o'clock, and she took her wash. So I said now, of the view of that now, if those who say that both of them have to observe the rest of the day, that if they said that, they cannot have intimacy. But also you don't have to, they can have intimacy. And they haven't done anything wrong. Clear? With me? You with me? So it shows out that's so the general view they mentioned that for those group of people, they do not have to own, they mention imsak. So they can still eat, they can still have intimacy, even though it is during the daylight hours of Ramadan, because they started off not fasting. And for them to have imsak, not to observe eating and drinking for the rest of the day, there's something which is mandub according to some of the ulama, even though some mention is wajib. But if they were to do anything of those sorts, then, or a woman who's of her cycle during the day, it stopped, and she chooses to eat, then she can eat for the rest of the day, because her cycle of stop at 11 o'clock, and she chooses now to eat. After then she's allowed. She don't per se observe imsak. She don't have to observe imsak with abstaining from food and drink for the rest of the day, because she started out not fasting. So they mentioned, so that's concerning those particular cases. But I said that's concerned that you have. I mentioned there's khilaf between the ulama and those matters. But for they mention it concern among the Shafi'iyah, they mention nadam. That's something which is not wajib for a person in those cases, that they should observe imsak. It's nadam, which is something which is encouraged and preferred maybe to be done, but it's not wajib. It's not the degree of wajib. The point was that some of the mashaykh, kibar mashaykh of this time, that I've heard myself from them, that I mentioned the person in that case, they must observe siyam for the rest of the day. They have to observe imsak for the rest of the day. They went on to mention regarding these matters concerning of others that he mentioned concerning that وَلَوْ طَهُرَتْ الْآهِدْ, and he mentioned concerning, again the same discussion regarding concerning أَمْسَكَتْ بَدَأَ نَدْمًا, that even a woman that is in her menstrual cycle or the nufasa and they become pure, mention أَمْسَكَتْ nadban, that it is preferred for them to withhold eating and drinking for the rest of the day. I mean, it include intimacy. It include concern for the woman that she started the day on her cycle, then it stopped, she took her shower, took her ghusl, For the rest of the day, from time it stop, it is nadman, it is encouraged, preferred for that group of people, that woman, that she should observe imsak. That imsak from food, drink, and intimacy. But I've said no, with them it is mandub. They mention waqadat hatman, and also becomes compulsory that the case of the woman, that she have to make up after, she have to make qada after. Or I mention أو قدم المسافر أو بري المريض هما مفتران. And also the same thing we discussed concerning the person who is a traveler of return, or the person who have reached his destination. Then I mentioned that those people, that is preferred the person traveling from here to Mecca to perform Umrah. When he arrived there, when he started his journey, when he arrived there, that he broke his fast on the plane. When he arrived there, it's still daylight hours. They mentioned that person is also mustahab, that person that observe imsak for the rest of that day. They said nadman according to this view. They mentioned amsaka nadban wa qada, and but the person in those cases, the person who is ill and the person, the traveler, then it's preferable for them to, when they arrive and settle in their location, for them to not eat and drink, and also intimacy. But also it becomes mentioned wa qadaya hatman, becomes compulsory upon them to make up after. But as for arriving at your destination and the rest of the day, then they all let you know it's not compulsory that you have to have imsak, withhold from food, drink, and intimacy. It is something which is encouraged, something which is encouraged, but not wajib. Then I mentioned ولو قامت البينة بالرؤية يوم الشك وجبت إمساك ببقيته وقضاؤه ويؤمر الصبي به لسب ويضرب بالعشر. Then I mentioned the next matter, which is he discussed concerning that the case regarding a child, concerning that, again, the person that it became clear to him, that he had fasted a day of shak, he wasn't in doubt, then become affirm, then the person, the day of shak, that to fast that day. They mention wajibat imsak baqiya, that a person, if the day was a day of doubt, he did ihtiyatan, he wasn't sure, but he kind of somewhat started that day fasting, unsure, is it Ramadan or not Ramadan? So yawm shak, which is not a day to fast, but a person did fall in that case, then it became confirmed that was the first of Ramadan. So initially started what? With shak. But then became confirmed that it is Ramadan. I mentioned a person, wajibat, becomes compulsory upon a person that they should still observe that day, but also make it up after. Because he didn't have the intention that being for certain Ramadan, because he had doubt. And we discussed concerning an-niyah. So because the person didn't start with the intention of it being for certain Ramadan, he was in doubt, uncertain, then he has to fast that day, jaziman, he should fast with a person having certainty. And that wasn't present, that was not present. So the person have to still observe siyam for the rest of that day, and also have to make up that day after Ramadan. Then he mentioned, وَيُؤْمَرْ السَّبِي بِهِ لِسَبْ وَيُضْرَبْ لِأَشْرٍ. And also he mentioned the next matter, which is a child that if they have reached the age of, so concerning the child, that at the age of 7, then they should be encouraged by their parents to fast. If they're qadir, if they're able. So if the child after the age of 7, they should be encouraged to fast, though they are form as a form of tadrib, as a form of start to get into the practice of fasting. So the parents should kind of somewhat instruct them, encourage them to fast. That I mentioned that at the age of 10, I mentioned وَيَضْرِبْ, that the person will become more, that they can be disciplined at that age of 10. So the age of 10, they can be disciplined for if they tarka siyam, if they're not fasting. So the child not fasting, then the parents can discipline that child for not fasting. And it's made upon the hadith regarding concerning that as-salat, regarding concerning the Prophet mentioned that concerning that as-sabra ibn Ma'bad al-Juhani قال عليه السلام قال مروا صبي بالصلاة إذا بلغ 7 سنين, that you should command, instruct the child to perform the salat. إذا بلغ 7 سنين, if they have reached the age of 7 years. وإذا بلغ 10, and if they reach the age of 10 سنين, 10 سنين, فاضربوا عليه. Then you can, you can discipline them. نعم. Physically. So discipline, physical discipline. أيوة. ولفنا تام الله مستعان. So Allah mustan. So something you have to comply with which you don't want. So they're disciplined physically. So better they're disciplined physically. You understand? Without any form of bruises. Nam. So and the hadith in Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Ahmed, hadith قال الترمذي hadith حسن الصحيح or أساسا. So general concerns, so that's concerning matters that he mentioned here regarding those cases. So show the concern, so show the importance of siyam. So when a child reaches a certain age, then the parents should start to encourage the child regarding observing of these acts of ibadah, as-salah, and also siyam. From the age of 7, they should now understand. And from that age, that win of the hijab for the child. Nam. So from those age, become more firm regarding, be more observant in them observing certain things regarding a siyam. I would say not in our environment that we live in, concerned to know that at those age, either you inform the school, you understand, depending on the timings, inform the school what's going on, so you understand, it doesn't, you don't bring trouble onto yourselves. So inform the school of the situation type of thing, so as to kind of somewhat make sure things are transparent in this environment. Then he mentions, go on to our next discussion, he mentions.
How do they do, basically, how did they derive? Well, you mentioned that it was on Yom Shak. The Mu'allif mentions that it's wajib. It says wajib imsak. But they do, but for everything else they make it mandub. Where both of them are connected in some way.
Now, as I mentioned,
they didn't have niyyah before. For example, the woman who was on, who was high, and then she became pure, she wouldn't have to do imsak, or she is basically mandub if she wants to do it or not. And it's not wajib, but for Yom Shak it's wajib.
Because from Yom Sham said that in most of those things you have khilaf in the ulama, but he kind of somewhat more stressed here regarding concerning Yom Shak. But he said that's not been confirmed. So he started out as he's doubtful, uncertain. Is it Ramadan? Ramadan, you do ihtiyat. You understand? But then it became confirmed that the hilal was spotted. So that day is actually the first of Ramadan. But even though, for example, the person lives somewhere, he started uncertain, but then got the message later on that it's actually the first of Ramadan. Then because it now, so it actually now, so it's now confirmed it's Ramadan, he must fast. So from that time, from the point that he got the information, it becomes upon him a must for him to observe that day as Ramadan. Even though he started out in doubt. But from the point the information have reached him, that it is confirmed that it's actually of Ramadan, it's not a doubt anymore. Then it becomes wajib upon him now to observe the rest of the day as doing something which is wajib.
But that's being something that was doubtful, whereas everything else wasn't doubtful. They knew it was Ramadan.
Kem said, because those people initially from the start, they had the legitimate reason not to fast that day. Okay. You understand? So the woman who was on her cycle, she had already been exempted to fast. But then, so it became that during her cycle, it stopped during the day of Ramadan, the daylight of Ramadan. So they mentioned that mandu for her, somewhat said, they say hurmat al-yawm, somewhat to respect the rest of the day. That's why I said they prefer not to fast. You understand? They prefer not to fast. And tashabbuh bis as-sa'imin, for you can sound to resemble to somewhat the people who are fasting. You understand? Somewhat to resemble the people that are fasting. But said in those cases, of course, we may have legitimate reasons. You understand that not to do it. They said if you have even a legitimate reason, you understand, not to do it, don't be too blatant. Yeah. You with me? The person come on a minbar and start to eat. You understand? In front of everyone who's fasting.
It's fitna.
You understand? Then after that becomes that not be mindful of others. You understand that you might have a person who may understand that it's not a problem for them. But your next person is, you understand, is you're fasting Ramadan. Either see everyone should not be fasting, you're fasting. You understand? For him, becomes a fitna, and next thing you and him, you understand, are going at each other. So the person of looking at something to be measured in how they balance those things. Then he mentioned Yubi al-Fitr, regarding concern of those group of people. So the next matter that he discussed, so that's concerning what we have just covered is those people who it is that must fast, those who don't have to fast, and some people when the situation change. Some people when the circumstances change, where it becomes, then he mentioned now, Yubi al-Fitr. Those cases where the person is allowed to not fast. Cases where a person is allowed not to fast. He mentioned first, he start غلبة الجوع والعطش, that a person mentioned that with intense hunger and thirst. So the person who is going through intense hunger and thirst that he mentioned, بحيث, we know what is meant by intense hunger and thirst. You mentioned بحيث يخشى الهلاك والمرض. That a person that if he, that level of thirst and hunger, that it could lead to halak, to the person being destroyed. You understand? It could be very severe on the person, or marad, could make him ill. So the person that you're going that level of hunger or thirst, where it could lead to the person, you understand, having drastic impact on the person, then he mentioned it is allowed for the person to break off his fast, for the person, and yuftir. وَلَوْ طَرَحَ في إثناء اليوم إذا شق الصوم. So even something was occur while the person is fasting and it came upon him, and that he didn't eat the night before or make suhoor and all those things. So during the day, a long day and very hot, it starts then to have an impact on the person, thirst, and the person, let's say, becomes sick from this. Then according to this view, the person can break his fast. The person can break off his fast for that day. Then I mentioned second, so that's one category of people that can break fast. غلبة الجوع والعطش. We mentioned من حيث بحيث يخشى الهلاك. The person fear it could have severe impact on him, or marad, or it could lead to illness.
What if someone makes themselves sick, like for an activity, like they know they're fasting, but they still go out for a morning run, like they usually do, and they know that's going to affect their fast?
And then that person then that case is different. And the person to ta'ammad, know the situation and put difficulty upon themselves. Then that case is different. Then the person become athim for what he's doing. He become athim. You understand? He might have a legitimate reason to break his fast, but also he's sinful because he did things, put difficulty on himself.
Yeah, if like you mentioned, if the person breaks his fast basically because one of the reasons is tiredness, or like he didn't have suhoor or something like that, what's the kafara for that?
Then said that with that person, they make up that day.
Just one day.
They make up the day that they missed. So these against the person, anyone is allowed, that I mentioned, the Sharia have given an allowance for them to break their fast for whatever the reason may be, then that person have to make it up after. Now the person has to make it up after. So they're just discussing concerning the cases. So there's discussing that those who are of a legitimate reason to break off their fast, then they discuss concerning what to be done in those cases. Then I mentioned Safar al-Qasr in Fariq al-Umran, that قبل الفجر وإن نوى من الليل. Then I mentioned the case that I mentioned وإن سافر بعده. Then I mentioned فالفطرة للمسافر أفضل إن ضره الصوم وإلا فالصوم أفضل. Then this is the next group of people that are those people are said to be al-musafir. So the case regarding concern as the musafir said Safar al-Qasr, that a person who they suffer their journey, their travel, it is one that they're allowed that they can make qasr, which is, what is qasr? They can shorten their salah. So the person that second somebody gives, so you have safar, where you're traveling at a distance where you are not, that you are allowed to shorten your salat, combine between your salat because of the distance that you're traveling. And you have the type of travel, the person may be traveling from one point to another is a form of travel, but it is not one which allows you for qasr. And also find some ulama regarding safar, that some the difference as safar al-mubih wa safar al-asi. Or safar al-ta'a, where I said a safar where the person is a safar where is a form of obedience, you're doing things which is allowed. And you have al-masiya or safar lil-masiya, the person who is doing a travel to do something which is masi. The one which is for ma'asi, to involve in thing which is sinful, they said all these concession does not apply. That's some of the ulama. Even I said that even that view per se, there's no clear delil for that view. That but of the ulama who somewhat they have divided a safar, traveling in though which is ata', you're doing thing which is mubah or mubah. So you're going for valid reasons while you're traveling. Then you have those have a travel, a person that you're traveling, and the person intends to do thing which is ma'asi. They're intending to do something which is, I'm going to travel, a person going to travel from A to point B, and his intention is to steal. He's going to rob a particular place, but in a different city. That's his intention for traveling, to steal, to rob, to take a life of someone. So those travelers said of ma'asi, then it's not allowed for the person all these concession. Not for you to shorten your salat, to combine your salat, not for you to. But we said overall, there's no clear evidence for that. Even what is what they're doing is wrong. But as I said, these concession doesn't apply to them. Of those that I mentioned, there's no clear dalil regarding those cases. But overall, he mentioned that safar al-qasr, that they discuss here, Imrani, they discuss concerning that safar al-qasr, that they mentioned that any safar that exceed 84 kilometers, they use kilometers today, is it kilometers? They said mil Hashimi, which is said about 84, they say kilometer in our measurements today, distance, that would be what in miles? About 50 something?
Yeah.
About 50 something miles. So any travel that exceed 84 plus in kilometers in distance, you're automatically a traveler. So any distance from one place A to place B, then if it exceeds that distance, you're a traveler. You're a traveler. Now, so any distance, then that's from your city to that place. If it exceeds this distance, then you're a traveler. Then anything now below, so Abu Hanifa are concerned today, 3-day walking, which they say 3-day walking is that distance. So Abu Hanifa, can someone see it as that in time of the Prophet ﷺ, that there was no plane, there was no, you understand, that is, so he'd use it by feet. So he would travel like a 3-day travel journey, but I mentioned that journey is what is 84 kilometers. Now, in measurement today. So I mentioned that anything that is above this, then you're a traveler automatically. Then if anything below this, it is 60 kilometers. You're traveling your distance from your city to the city that you're going is 60 kilometers, the distance between both. Are you a traveler or not? So they mentioned that goes back to the urf of the people. So anything above 84, traveler, automatic. Anything below this, then it goes back to, for between 2 points. City A and city B goes back to the urf of the people as to, do they deem traveling between those two places, is it travel or not? So for example, we are from, so it said 60, so from here to Luton, what's the distance? 20 kilo? 20 miles. So that's below 50. So that would be about 30. So is that travel from here to Luton? So that go back to the urf of the people. What's concerning that now? What's established between the people? That do the people that move between those cities, do they consider it to be travel? Or they consider it to be just normal distance? So it goes back to the urf, to understand the urf of the people as to how they see the journey between those two cities. So if they consider it to be a form of travel, then you're a traveler. If they do not, then it is not. Because it goes back to the urf of the people. Anything we said below 84 goes back to the urf of the people. So the one that are more closer to it, most people might still be, the people might consider to be travel. The one that are maybe less, 20, 10, then that's where you might find the difference between the people. And especially as cities, they become more metropolitan cities, and have to become much closer, and the way of travel.
38 miles.
Hey, so that would be
61 kilometers.
so is that travel? That goes back to the urf of the people, al-adat, al-nas. So that's concerning travel. But I mentioned
Is that the people of the city or the people of like a borough? So like example,
a city.
because if you're traveling from, example, the people of North London to Luton, it's going to be much shorter. Because like you said, the cities have become big. So someone that's in Croydon in London and someone that's in North London, when they're trying to do this distance to Luton, Luton from North London is going to be much shorter. Because by the time they come through Croydon, that's what they
They come through the city.
They might see it as travel. By the time they come through the city,
And the city start, the distance starts from the point that you leave, we said the outskirts of your city. So yes, the people from North London, you understand, for maybe them to hit the motorway quicker, maybe quicker for them. You understand? But the distance will be from, we said, what we consider to be London. You understand? So not necessarily from south or from east. You understand? So what is the closest from London to Luton?
that's where they might differ. Like the people from Croydon might say, take us 1 hour just to get to North. So we see.
And if the city become that big, we find the people in different, we said, we call boroughs. You understand? East, west, north, south, or region of the, you understand? Then if they consider themselves the people between those two cities from that point of the city considered to be, it's not for them to travel, then it goes back to the urf of those people. It goes back to the urf of those people. So it goes back to al-urf. So the urf could be the city in general, or say because we have very large cities, then now people from different sides see things different. People see things different. Okay, with that inshallah we'll end, and we'll pick up regarding concerning this matter regarding as-safar and what comes after. Ubillahi ta'ala tawfiq.